Hello, class. I wanted to also upload just kind of a brief understanding or expectation of the proposal paper. I've had a chance to go through many of your part ones, and I've also had a chance to address some questions regarding the proposal paper itself. And so I thought it'd be smart if I just uploaded a kind of voice recording that you could hear my expectations and what was needed in the proposal. So let me first say this is a proposed study. You are not actually going to complete this study, nor should you write it from the point of view that it is been or it has been done. Okay, so this is a kind of the pre-phase of doing research. You're just simply trying to propose an idea and how you would go about researching that idea. As far as the actual expectations, I expect the proposal to be at least 15 pages, not including the title page, abstract, reference page, or any appendices. Okay, but ideally no longer than 20 pages, and so try to kind of dictate how that might look. One way of thinking about it is your part two, which is your literature review, should definitely be the longest part of your paper. Part two and uh, would have the most information, I should say, or should have the most information. Part one should be a couple of pages, maybe 3, 4 pages, uh, maybe upwards of even 5, depending on what it is you're looking at. Part three is going to be covering more of the methodology, and in that part, a lot of it's going to be proposed because you're not actually doing this study, and so that should take a couple of pages. You'll be needing to explain the methodology, which one you would like to use, as well as the type of participants and things like that that you're hoping to obtain. So I I hope that provides some clarification about the proposal, but let's go into each kind of part and look at that. So, in part one, or in chapter one, really, the introduction, you're really trying to set up the tone for the study, the tone for the proposal. So, in this part, you should have or provide the readers with an explanation of the topic or subjects and a brief overview of the literature, just to highlight the fact that this phenomenon does exist or is important in some way, so the reader has something to grab onto. Okay, through this kind of brief overview of the literature, then what you're trying to do is develop a statement of the problem. So, why is there a problem? Or what is the problem is a better way of phrasing that. Based on your understanding of what's going on, what do you think the problem is? And clearly define that. The previous kind of literature you use is really evidence for why it is a problem. Okay? And then you develop kind of the purpose of the study. So you gave a brief overview of the literature. You said, here's the problem. Now you're saying, this is kind of what I'm going to do about it. This is the proposed study and the purpose of this study that you're hoping at the end of this study you can provide additional information on these subjects or the topics. And then after you kind of bring up the purpose of the study, you want to make sure you clearly explain your research question or questions that are kind of governing and dictating your proposal and your research, if you will. Okay, and then hopefully you provide kind of a transition into the literature review, part two. So part two, a literature review, really aims to provide in-depth review of what's already being studied and what's adding or not adding to kind of this problem or the purpose of your study. And so here's a chance for you to really say and find relevant information that says, okay, this is a problem or this hasn't been addressed and it should be addressed. and providing evidence for your research questions. Because it goes back to kind of this deductive approach to research. Literature reviews serve as a place to say, this is all of the information we might have right now, or this is what I have for this topic. Based on this, I'm thinking ... which is your proposal that you're trying to add. The literature review, it's helpful to think of it in a funnel, really. What you're doing is you're starting very broad in your literature review with a kind of, you look at your topic and you say, okay, what are the subtopics? What are the subpoints in this overall arching topic? You start more broad. And then towards the end of your literature review, it should be much more specific to the, not exact, but to the research question you're asking. So take, for example, I brought this up before, a study I did on male sexual assault survivors and counselors' experience. And my literature review, I wanted to start broad and get specific. So I broke it up into 4 subcategories, which I strongly encourage you to do, is breaking into subcategories. The first subcategory was gender norms as they relate to men and women. Men and women develop differently, which definitely comes into play with sexual assault and seeking treatment. So that was a very broad category. How men and women differ in reference to gender and their roles, and how culture kind of sets these ideas upon them, such as masculinity and femininity. Well, then I got a little bit more specific. I said, okay, here's all the literature or important literature as it relates to prevalence of sexual assault. So how common is sexual assault among both men and women? Okay. And then I went into the next subcategory of, well, let's look more specifically at the treatment options and barriers for men of sexual assault. What does that look like? What does the literature supply us there? And then I got very specific, and I looked at only the literature that related to counselor variables and what existed there. So through those categories and writing that literature review, I had a basis for my argument that counselors maybe aren't as adept at dealing with male sexual assault survivors. And my literature review built up that foundation, i.e. evidence, to make that argument, which further then justified my proposal. Does that make sense? And then chapter 3 is much more about the methodology. So this is where you say, okay, based on my literature, based on my research question, in order to kind of come to some conclusion, I've decided to say go with a qualitative, quantitative method. These are the participants I would be using because this methodology requires this. I might be using instrumentation. And you really walk somebody through the process of what you're going to do, how you will go about the process. And it's not necessarily that you've done the process. I would strongly encourage you to look at the example proposal I put on Sakai, just so you can have an understanding of how this is written in some regards. And then the last chapter, chapter 4, is really a discussion of the proposal, where you kind of bring up why this is important. Once again, you reiterate these points over and over again. And then you even supply some limitations of your proposal. Maybe you have some limitations that are natural to your methodology that you selected, or that there's simply just a lack of an understanding. And then you will supply some future directions, or what you're hoping this research can add, or what other questions can be studied, so to speak. I'm hoping that through hearing me talk about this, you have a little bit better understanding of the proposal. But I will say, so far you're doing very well with creating them. The big thing to remember is just use the literature, use peer-reviewed sources. I believe there's an expectation to have at least 15 peer-reviewed sources, and 2 books. These books, I want to be clear, you don't have to go out searching for these books. This can be your textbook, another research methods book might be helpful. I just want to make sure that you're getting a well-rounded kind of understanding and utilization of resources, okay? So please ask any questions you might have, review the example, review all of the resources that have been posted, but I'm definitely open to kind of fielding some questions if you do have them as you go along. The last thing I'll say is every submission I've put on the syllabus for Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4 is a draft-only submission. So I do ask that you have something done. It's just my way of helping you through this so you don't have to write it all at the end of the semester. And I'll provide some feedback to kind of help you through that. The final grade for each of those sections won't actually be done until the last submission, that you've kind of reworked all the kinks and things like that. And that's when I'll grade each section. So I really want to provide you the best opportunity to work through the proposal. And I'm hoping this is a way that will assist you. So if there's any other questions, please let me know. But from this point on, I will make sure I give you updates, kind of weekly updates on the proposal, where I'll try to give you the weekly updates. But I'll also provide you with additional information on each kind of section and how to kind of best go about that. Okay? Thank you.